Namo Phat. Good morning. Thank you for joining me for our daily practice check-in. Listen, listen, listen. This beautiful sound calls us back to our true home. The second mindfulness training. Aware of the suffering caused by exploitation, social injustice, stealing, and oppression, I vow to cultivate loving kindness and learn ways to work for the well-being of people, animals, plants, and minerals. I will practice generosity by sharing my time, energy, and material resources with those who are in real need. I'm determined not to steal and not to possess anything that should belong to others. I will respect the property of others, but I will prevent others from profiting from human suffering or the suffering of other species on earth. Our Dharma reading today is the Chapter 2 summary from Ajahn Thiradhammo's book, Working with the Five Hindrances. So there are different ways to approach sensual desires. First of all, there are sense pleasures which are based upon sense impressions. Thus we try to understand the sense impressions themselves: seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. We begin to become more aware of these sensory processes. Today, for example, for some reason my eyes were a bit funny. I just wasn't seeing very straight. I think I'd been looking through the camera at too many clematis flowers, so I know that the eyes are very unreliable. And what I was seeing, the consciousness, feeling, and perception, was very unreliable too. Thus our perception of what is beautiful and pleasurable is conditioned by unreliable data. Certainly, there are attractive sense impressions, but they are just impressions. Through understanding this more directly, we withdraw from dependence upon the senses and the perceptual process. None of our senses are very reliable, so how can we ever satisfy something which is so unreliable and impermanent? Secondly, there is desire itself. Desire separated from its object is something quite different from what we usually experience. But watch out, you might be hit by this free-floating desire, this desire as energy. However, through meditation practice, you can develop the concentration, the understanding, the ability to direct it. Where do you want to direct this desire now? Towards sensual desires or Dharma desires? We have a certain amount of control over desire once we see the processes which are actually working there. It's a matter of being able to become more aware of the real nature of sensual desires and what turns them on and off. If we can observe desire mindfully, we can investigate it wisely. What kind of desire? Desire for what? This is where we learn about this self, which has particular kinds of desires for this and that. Then we can look beyond the objects, food, sex, intoxication, whatever. What's behind them? We can see the becoming or existential realm where self is seeking to form, to come into being, to come into existence, to cohere as an entity. There's this urge for selfhood to express itself, and it comes out in sensual desire, or aversion, or sleepiness, or restlessness, or doubt. It seeks to take a particular form. When we look beyond the forms, we get back to the processes, the forces, the energies behind them. The Buddha called this craving, grasping, becoming. And this is where we can put an end to the nourishing of selfhood. When the sense of self does not cohere anymore as I, me, or mine, but is still functioning as a reference for consciousness. The investigation of and working with the hindrance of sensual desires is a particularly fruitful endeavor since, as mentioned at the beginning of the chapter, it is a key element in many areas of the Buddha's teachings. Through understanding sensual desires, we come to a clearer understanding of thirst or craving, tanha, grasping, upadana, the outflows, asava, the underlying dispositions, anusaya, and the feeling tones, vedana, which condition thirst and the desire for sensual pleasures. These are the keys to realization of the cessation of all desires and all suffering. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you for joining me this morning.